It's April 2026 and Cloud Code has become so good recently that entire projects that would have taken 2 weeks or longer can be done in an afternoon. But when developers started producing front ends that looked pretty well designed out of the box, I realized the value of the design team was inevitably going to be questioned. The writing was on the wall, adapt or die. But here's the thing, it's only when your back is up against a wall that you sometimes really hunker down and focus and figure things out. So when I did that, what I discovered changed everything about how I think about design, the skills, and the future of our profession. Stick around and let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Sharan and this is RedXF, a channel for designers who build. Today's video is short, but it's about an important topic. As designers, we built our careers on mastering tools like Figma, Sketch, Adobe Creative Suite, and some of us even code. But what happens when AI can do all of that? No one was really expecting it to come after our creative jobs first, but here it is. So, how do we survive and how do we compete? I'm going to share what our moat is and also the way I got to that answer. But I realized this is not going to be easy and we're going to have to reconsider the very fundamental question of what work is. So I woke up one day to an announcement within the company I work with. Everyone had to start using AI in their work. It wasn't just for the engineering team, it wasn't just the design team, it was for everyone. There were budgets allocated, expectations set, and we were given clear objectives that our outputs were now going to be measured with the assumption that AI was in use. Just like it happens with the initial adoption of AI anywhere, the first waves saw people just maxing outputs. They were producing multiple applications and websites in a matter of days. Some were producing not just one or two reports, but tens of reports based on the data that they were working with. Others produced entire frameworks to track tasks across the entire company. But the second wave was interesting, and where we started seeing work being produced across functions. I saw engineers not just producing back-end code, but front ends with animation and all. And instead of sharing sketched wireframes as they normally did, the marketing teams were producing live website implementations to communicate how they wanted to structure a certain site. It had great imagery and style consistency throughout. I lead the design team and suddenly my team's value was being questioned. And when someone attacks you, the first instinct is to defend yourself. So I pushed back. I pointed out the gaps in the AI output, and all true by the way. But it was also clear to me that there would come a point in time where I'd be hard pressed to find issues with the outputs. It was time to pull up our socks. I remember the day when I first used a printer ever. I was participating in a school food festival that was going on, and I had a stall and I wanted to print a banner for my stall. So I visited my cousin whose dad had a computer with a dot matrix printer attached to it. I loaded up WordStar on it and typed out my stall name in the largest font possible and printed it. In about 10 or 15 minutes, it probably took a lot longer, I had my banner. I was amazed. The banner looked pretty bad, believe me. It wouldn't pass any graphic artist standards. But I was in my 7th grade and my stall was going to be the only one with the banner. But I think a large part of that excitement came from being able to do it myself. I think we're at a similar point today with AI. Among all the other things it has enabled, the authorship of websites and applications has been democratized. Anybody can build it. The skill that one had to gain by learning the process, the science, the craft was no longer a barrier to entry. Is the output good? No. Will it get better over time? Absolutely. But it's also important to note that only the baseline has been raised, not the top line. In other words, AI tools in the hands of experts will always produce better outputs. That gap will always remain. But we need to ask, is that gap pertinent? The analogy applies to enterprises as well. All organizations work based on constraints like time and money. So, an output that does the job, delivered faster and cheaper, will always be better than something that is superior but takes longer or more money. Basically, the law of diminishing returns. This will inevitably be the case with AI outputs as well. They will become good enough in most situations, and code produced by designers will meet that standard. These apps will excel on design because it's a designer wielding the tool, and it'll be good enough on all other dimensions. But here's the thing, I use coding as an example, but this holds for any other domain like marketing, sales, finance, operations, product management too. Designers can and should participate in all these fields in a bigger way. But those of you who have been paying attention will be asking whether this idea would apply to non-designers as well. And that really is the deeper point here. Anybody can participate in any field because AI is now helping blur those lines between functions. If you're one of those people that felt limited by your design title, you couldn't have lived in a better time in history. Let's talk about taste a little, because anytime anybody talks about AI and design, the conversation inevitably arrives at taste being the one human quality that cannot be replicated by AI. This may be a hot take, but I don't believe that. I used to, but not anymore. Let me explain. Let's get specific with the definition, because taste is one of those squishy words that we all feel like we know what it means, but when asked, people can't define it exactly. Let me read out the definition that I've liked. Taste in design is calibrated judgment, is the ability to discern between what merely works and what resonates. That is taste. It is not a set of preferences because that's subjective. So by this definition, taste comprises perception, discernment, and restraint. In other words, being observant enough to notice the details like rhythm and white space, etc. Having the knowledge of why something makes someone feel a certain way. And finally, knowing what to say no to. And this can be taught. It happens in design schools all the time. It is simply learned through studying the science behind it and through exposure. So at the most fundamental level, taste is pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is clearly the domain of AI. So AI will also develop that taste which is good enough. Humans could contribute over and above that, but it will always be assessed by the same laws of diminishing returns. And while some designers will be able to serve that need, the market for it will be forever diminishing. Add to that, interfaces are generally going to disappear. Agents acting on behalf of their users will communicate with applications solely through APIs to get the job done. So UX designers specifically would be best advised to steer clear of this battle. Intelligence, labor, and coordination have been human-driven since the beginning of time. With AI, that fundamental idea has actually changed. They can think and execute and coordinate faster than any human ever. This is going to force organizations to reorganize themselves differently and to not worry about functional domains anymore. Jobs, therefore, that was centered around skill, the domain of the how something is done, will no longer be around because that's going to be answered by AI. But this isn't something that should give us pause. Being a painter in the past meant that you'd create your own paints, starting with powders and such. And then you'd have to actually make the frame with wood and saws and nails and hammers and things like that. And only after putting all the canvas on that could you actually paint and express what is in your mind. Today, most painters go to an art store and pick up their canvases and just focus on the harder challenge of the blank white space. Organizations of the future will follow a similar path. We don't need to work on learning different tools, processes, and skills, that's going to be abstracted away. So when creation becomes easy, there's nothing to celebrate in the act of simply bringing something to life. The harder question is, and has always been, the why behind it all. We get to focus on that. We need to go from the brush and the canvas to the very reason for painting at all. We've got to stop asking how something should be done and start asking what's the problem that you're really solving, and solve that, whether it belongs within the UX designer function or not. In other words, we've got to become entrepreneurs. And incidentally, that's the real moat. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you're doing to navigate this rapidly changing world. I read every single comment and I'll be responding to as many as I can. But this conversation is really just getting started. I want to explore this a lot more in depth in future videos. But I've been working with AI agents a lot of late and have been employing that towards my work. And in my next video, I'm going to be talking more about my experience with it. If you're interested in AI agents for designers, check back in now when that's released. If you want to go deeper on any of these ideas, head over to red.in. That's redd.in. That's our website. And if you found this video helpful, hit that like and subscribe button. We're building a community of designers who are adapting to this new world together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.